Howdy folks, you're watching Deuce. This is an AK-47, not to be confused with an SKS. So how did the media misidentify the rifle being pointed at Trump as an AK-47 when it turns out it was an SKS? Well, let's talk about that and talk about the general differences between the AK-47 and the SKS. First of all, the introductions. This is an AK-47 pattern rifle. It's actually an AMD 65 from Hungary, but it's close enough. It operates exactly like an AK-47 with parts that are interchangeable with one. This is an SKS from Romania, I believe. Yes, from Romania. And it is a standard SKS, and it shoots very, very well. The uneducated will immediately recognize the fact that the AK-47 has a great big huge magazine hanging down below it. This is a 20-round magazine. I thought I didn't have one, but apparently I bought one years and years ago. So this is compliant with YouTube's requirements for under 30-round magazines. YouTube, do not demonetize this video, please. I gotta pay the bills. The SKS also has a magazine hanging down below the action of the rifle, and it's right there. It holds 10 rounds, and it is pretty much permanently attached to the rifle, but you can take them off if you really try. The main reason why that rifle was misidentified as an AK-47 is because of that great big huge curved magazine coming out from underneath the rifle. But I assure you, it is an SKS. There are companies out there that make aftermarket magazines that are higher capacity and look just like an AK-47 magazine, but fit the SKS. Now, to get one to fit, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of issues trying to get one to fit and work correctly. I don't recommend them. If you want an AK-47, just buy an AK-47. They're actually cheaper now than the SKS. The aftermarket SKS magazines are not cross-compatible with the AK-47 and vice versa. The tops of the magazines are completely different, except for one Chinese variant that was a commercially available product that took normal AK-47 magazines. Other than that, a unicorn in the crowd, they do not take AK mags. Let's take a look at how you load these individual magazines. First off, the AK-47. I have my 20-round magazine right there ready to go, and I'm just going to take rounds and put them one at a time into the magazine. They fit right in, and there's no problem whatsoever. Traditionally, the SKS is loaded from the top with a stripper clip, a 10-round stripper clip, and they slide right in. Depending on the model of aftermarket magazine that's on this person's SKS rifle, that will determine how it's loaded, either from the top like an SKS or outside the rifle like an AK-47. Other notable differences about this person's SKS is that the beautiful wood stock had been removed and replaced with a crappy plastic stock, probably bought at a gun show for 40 bucks. It looks garbage in my eyes. The attached bayonet had also been removed, and a scope had been fitted. It is not too hard to mount a scope to an SKS, but it is difficult to make one stable because this whole action back here is loose and will rock back and forth. So there's a lot of work involved to get a scope to be super accurate on an SKS. So that is a short list of reasons why that person's SKS was misidentified as an AK-47. But what are the differences and the similarities between the SKS and the AK-47? Well, let's talk about that now because these are both very cool iconic rifles. First off, the similarities. Both these rifles shoot the iconic 7.62x39. This was one of the first the 7.62x39 cartridge is one of the first intermediate cartridges to hit the battlefield. Of course, the Germans did the first one, but here we have probably the second one that was in wide use. And both rifles' actions are actuated by a gas piston on top of the barrel. So just like the AK-47, the SKS has a barrel right here, and then above the barrel is the gas piston and the whole assembly to charge the action and move the bolt back. And that's pretty much all the similarities. Everything else on these rifles are different. So anyone that tells you that the SKS is the father to the AK-47 is just plain wrong. If someone claims that the SKS is the father to the AK-47, they need to go to the Maury Povich show and get a DNA test because SKS, you are not the father. So Maury Povich, is that what his name is? I don't watch daytime TV. So now the differences. Number one is that most SKS rifles have an attached bayonet. The vast majority of AK-47s do not have a permanently attached bayonet. And of course, it has a 10-round fixed magazine, which was 99.9% of all SKSs had that 10-round magazine. There was a Chinese variant that had a 20-round fixed magazine, and it looks something funky right there. I've tried to get my hands on one of those. They are rarer than hen's teeth. You cannot find those anywhere, and if you do, they are asking big bucks for them. So I gave up that search quite a while ago, but they do exist. As already mentioned, the AK-47 has a detachable magazine right here. This is a 20-round magazine. Make note of that, YouTube. But typically there are 30 rounds and above. The length of the barrels are also usually very different. The typical SKS has a 20-inch barrel, whereas the AK-47 commercial variants are typically 16 inches, which means technically there's a good chance that the round that's fired out of the SKS will be more powerful than the round that comes out of the AK-47. Now, why is that? Because typically speaking, I don't know what kind of powder Tula uses in their 7.62x39, but most gunpowders for rifles will take advantage of those extra 4 inches in an SKS, and the bullet will exit a little bit faster. We're talking only 5 or 10%, maybe stretching it, but a little bit faster, which means there will be a little bit more velocity, a little more energy, and a little more lethality with the same round coming out of an SKS. Now, does that really matter? No, just on paper. The two actions are also very different. The SKS uses what's called a tilting bolt design, which basically means you have your bolt, it strips a cartridge from the magazine, puts the cartridge into the chamber, and then once it's seated, it drops down, it tilts down, and locks into place behind this little bar in the receiver. The AK-47, on the other hand, uses what's called a rotating bolt, where the bolt strips a cartridge from the magazine and then locks into place by rotating into place where it locks in. I'm shooting a second version of that description with actual props, but if you're not seeing that right now, if you're just watching me use my hands, then YouTube demonetized that version. As far as your shootability is concerned, the SKS, I believe, is easier and more fun to shoot. The AK-47 is a little more unwieldy, especially the wire stock. Don't get the wire stock if you want to have any kind of fun shooting it. I made mistakes in my life. This is one of them. Now let's take a look at the off-the-shoulder accuracy of these rifles while at the shooting range. Accuracy-wise, it is hard to make a judgment call, but in general, the average Joe AK-47 from your big box store is going to be less accurate than a good representation of an SKS. That being said, SKSs have not been made for many decades. They're becoming more and more worn out as they age and becoming less and less accurate. The typical cheap AK-47 from your big box store, you're looking at probably a 4 to 5 inch group at 100 yards. A good condition SKS will probably get you closer to 3 inch groups at 100 yards, but that being said, neither of these are going to be sniper rifles. There are some very accurate AK-47s on the market, but they're the exception, not the rule. When the rifle was spotted by the Secret Service, the shooter was somewhere around 400 yards from Donald Trump. Could an SKS or an AK-47, even a good one, shoot accurately out to 400 yards? Not really. If you had an almost pristine SKS with match grade ammo, maybe, but I've never seen match grade 7.62x39. Do they make it? I'm sure they do. I've never bothered to look because that's kind of stupid. If I'm shooting for accuracy, I've got a bolt-action rifle with 6.5 Creedmoor in it. I'm not shooting a semi-automatic rifle with 7.62 x 39. And you know this guy did not search out the most accurate 7.62 x 39. He was shooting the same crap I do with Tula or Wolf or some other import brand that is very cheap as you can go. But apparently to news reports, had the rifle not been spotted by the Secret Service, and Donald Trump had been allowed to go ahead and continue his golf game, he would have been within 100 yards of the fence line and the shooter. Both of these rifles are more than capable of making that shot at 100 yards. Along with these major details of similarities and differences, there are many, many minor differences and similarities between these two rifles that I'm not going to get into because I don't want this video to be an hour long. But if you are looking for a general SKS versus AK-47 as far as Deuce is concerned, the SKS. I have one AK-47 pattern rifle and many SKSs. They're just a joy to shoot. If you have an opportunity to pick an SKS up, do it. They're just fun to have at the range. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like and go subscribe. A lot more is on the way. If you have any comments, questions, show ideas, leave that down in the comments down below. I try to answer as many of those as possible, especially the first couple of hours after this video goes live. And as always, you guys have a great day. See ya.